Hi all, hope you're having a good little period here and I have a quick video for you on a comparison of Galatians 5 and the chastening of the Spirit compared with the Essene Gospel's iteration on this same chastening of the Spirit. So I'll start here from 5:14, go onward and make the comparison, and yeah, let's dig in and see what we can figure out. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. But if ye bite and devour one another, take ye heed that ye be not consumed one of another. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. And to make a pause here, I do believe that your um, complexion will actually heal the more you live in the spirit and the less you live in the flesh. I think the more you live in this flesh, you will literally have more skin problems. I mean, it makes sense if you're caking on makeup or doing all sorts of unhealthy things to yourself to maintain an image, false image, then it's going to show up negatively in your flesh. So let's continue. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, which we know is simply going against your partner, um, being polyamorous, really, when there isn't consent. I suppose polyamory technically is probably it's fine until you're married, but even then, it's not recommended and pretty gross. And I think that leads into fornication. These first two are very similar. Um, and then I also think of fornication. I think it's this broad spectrum. I think it does cover this eating of the flesh as well, but they don't address this here in Galatians. Uncleanness, which it could be of your tongue, which I think is probably more important than your garb and whatnot. Also, elsewhere in the Bible, it's spoken of God's true children seeming as wretched compared to the world because we don't value the same things. You know, we value meekness and loyalty and kindness, not a status or, puffing oneself up or wearing all these crazy things that make us seem, make us stand out like a peacock. So uncleanness, I view again, it's a broad term, but generally speaking, yeah, you're not supposed to be stinky or wretched or um, just unnaturally gross. Refusing to bathe and things of that nature. Lasciviousness, and then I know what this word means. I've spent some time with it, but it's one of those words that is not used as often. So we'll skip ahead and just get into that. It's just filling with or showing a sexual desire. So it's interesting that they split these up, the fornication and the lasciviousness, which they go all well together. But I think it should be before uncleanness, maybe. But oh well, it's a minor tidbit. But yeah, all those first four go together, and they are it's very interrelated. You don't have a clean spirit, and I think a lot of this has to do with your thoughts, and lasciviousness is specifically, um, where just showing a sexual desire, going out and this whole idea of like having the beach bod was always brought up. It's like, why do you care if you have a partner? Why do you need to like look good for everybody else at the beach? I don't know. I just remember like that coming up a lot growing up, and it was just weird. Um, but yeah, any sort of porn is obviously in this. Basically, anything that's not about your partner, your other is wrong, and it makes sense. I mean, it feels good. Um, and now, what, pretty much 4 years in with my partner, and yeah, every day it gets easier, and it's those bad thoughts of youth or very rarely the occasional like somewhat sexual thought about something else that isn't her arise, and it just immediately goes away or dissipates because it's usually grounded in nothing. And I think it is this holdover from um, misbehavior in youth. So these things follow you and they'll affect your vision. So you got to be very careful with chastening yourself and do it right. Although it really isn't that complicated. So we'll go forward. Idolatry, pretty straightforward. Anybody that's not, there's just whole making statues, praying to things that have no real grounds besides God. God is the essence and the source, and any strange derivation and appraisal of such, even these celebrities, is just wrong, purely wrong. Witchcraft, and obviously I'm not talking about green witches, people who use herbs to heal. Purely mean people that, hair of the dog. They're not concerned with the animals they harm or how they make their potions, just so long as it achieves the desired effect of either making them more quote unquote beautiful, or increasing their lifespan, or harming somebody else. Things like voodoo and so forth. Obviously, those kinds of witchcraft. Hatred and variance go well together. I think just being at odds with people, and being frustrated and angry with people, um, for either no reason, or even if there is a reason, um, like not searching deeper, just sitting at that in that hatred instead of thinking, well, why is this person treating me that way, and maybe I can look at it differently. Um, Emulations. Now, this is another interesting one. Emulation in my lifetime has often been related to video games. That word, and it means the copying or achieving something else that someone else tried to do as well as they have. So in video games, obviously, to emulate a game, you have a game that's out there, and then I've played emulated games before where somebody bought the game and then put it on a file and then put it on the internet because they felt it was a good thing to do, and it gets it out there, and that could be under stealing, piracy and whatnot. It's hard when it comes to old media, but I think it's a bit of this emulation. It's a expanded definition here. It's this deeper one where it's to make one jealous or zealous or jealous. Same idea where it's like one upping. You're trying to stand out. You're trying to, you know, excel somebody else. Someone comes to you with something, maybe an injury or something good they did, and you should you shouldn't immediately turn the conversation to what you're doing or try to one up them. That's clearly the wrong thing to do. Then I also think this emulation and the copy thing is also harmful. I think, emulating Jesus, I think it is good um, in some ways. I mean, maybe I'm butchering the words here, but it makes sense that his values of healing without getting a ton of attention or asking for attention at all is a great value. You should be doing that every day. But I think, I think of the people that they like love carpentry, or they, just because Jesus did it, like that kind of emulation where it's, you're not even really like yourself. You're not even thinking about your own thing. You're just, oh, well, he liked it, therefore I do. And there's probably not truth to that. So I think you got to be careful and not imitate just because you think it's good. You should be genuine with your feelings. Okay, so then to get back into it, wrath. Yeah, don't, get all like vengeance is God, basically. Vengeance is God's, basically. Don't, get all up in arms about things that ultimately don't matter. Strife. I don't know. I think it's good to strive for the truth, but I think you won't live in this. I guess you won't live in the same sort of strife if you aren't like doing all these things. It's not going to feel like strife. It's going to feel like, well, I'm living in God's path and things are good. I'm doing the right things. Seditions, another one that I think is not as commonly known. Seditions is disagreement without love, without decency, without order. Basically, like, I think of it as argument or arguing in bad taste, not trying to come to a conclusion, you know, arguing with ad hominems, yelling at the person or belittling them or nitpicking instead of looking at what they're trying to say. Um, Trying to bring peace, I think, is what we're doing all the time. So yes, seditions, just arguing for the sake of arguing or arguing without um, collective understanding or collective benefit in mind. Heresies as well, just going against order, I suppose. This is kind of a complicated one. Um, we're supposed to be okay, I suppose, with the Babylon and then seeing through it and then allow it and then bringing people to the light and showing how silly Babylon is. Um, but don't make a big, I don't know, like it's ridiculous because it makes sense to go against government, but there's parts of the Bible that tell you that just follow government. That's God's rule, and um, yeah, but you're not supposed to participate in politics. So what that really means, I don't know. I guess like pay, like I don't know. It's that's hardly clear. Envyings, murders, drunkenness. Envyings, yeah, plain. I think that is like the it goes along with seditions. I think envyings make seditions occur. Um, Murders, obviously, that's probably the most straightforward, obvious. Don't kill people or animals. Drunkenness, this is fleshed out better in the Essene, but yeah, I mean, I think that you could contend that maybe some alcoholic beverage is okay from this, but not so much that you are blathering and taking over people's spaces and times and being um, rude or revelings. So yeah, just going on and on and on, old stories. Just I don't know. Usually the context of my life is like it doesn't happen as often nowadays, but thinking of revelings would be like some drunk Martin at a party, just going on and on about their college or high school days or something. It's common. Anybody can do it. Um, so of the which I tell you before, as I've also told you in the times past, that which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Yes, because you're going to be blinded by them. That's what they do. If you give in to these things, it's a spiral. They keep coming up again and again. When I was stupid and young and, you know, thought like porn was this kind of like rite of passage, I watched it and part of me always knew it was gross. Whenever I would, I guess you could say climax, I always turned it off and shut the monitor immediately. It just felt disgusting, and knowing the deeper truth about the skeletons is certainly, certainly, just I guess gross. But in and of itself, the thought, the idea that you watch somebody else doing like such a intimate act for sport, and they get paid for it, basically, and it's just seeking out this pleasure instead of taking the pleasure as it comes. I remember thinking about this as a lot as a child. Was like, you can't, and this is basically with the whole Buddhist mindset of, never wanting, and I think this goes along with the Bible too, where, yeah, you can't force pleasure. You can't, and if you do, it's so often you fall into one of these ugly categories. So, um, don't do that. So then let's continue here. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. So yes, like being patient, having, um, not being not being quick to judge people. Obviously, it's good to judge people, but not like allowing it to lead to variance or hatred with somebody, but then seeing it as, well, somebody's falling victim to one of these things, and I've been there before. So how can I, be at odds with them? I just have to accept maybe their discontent or anger with me right now, but really it's with themselves. So yeah, um, And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lust. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another. And this is what it often has felt like for me at work last year, and oftentimes where you just, it's like some people, every word out of their mouth is some one up, or I did this. They can't even have a conversation or dig into somebody else's life because they're so ruled by these darknesses, these problems, these drunkennesses, or again, this idea of envy, or needing to stand out instead of just be okay with who you are inherently. So then let's go forward to the Essene Gospel, which I think cleans up the, I guess you could say, the ambiguity of these things, or the hollowness of some of the words that I read. So the word humane describes man at his, this is the beginning of the Essene writings, at his very human best, man who not only knows God's laws, but lives by them daily. For humaneness is a virtue that results from understanding of the spiritual fruits of the Holy Spirit. It can be said that the present Bible translations of our day discredit greatly the humane quality of Jesus, his teachings being tampered with by the Bible editors of the 3rd and 4th centuries of the Catholic Church. I completely agree with this. I was pretty surprised at how short Jesus's presence is in the Bible, as the KJV as is. Just not enough of him working with animals and with people. I felt that was indicative of how to be. There'd be like little episodes, little sections here and there, but I don't know. I felt like we were getting this Reader's Digest version, or yeah, this highly simplified version of the teachings, and it's to our detriment, because in reading these Essene Gospels and reading about Jesus saving all these various, cats and the horse and so forth, um, it just gives you greater perspective on the scope of souls and kindness and what it means to be a good person. So yeah, Catholic Church CC 33, of course, they're going to tamper with things. Only the Essene writings contain the complete story of the most kind and generous of all men. And I feel like that aspect, the generous thing, it's just not emphasized enough. It's more so like the righteousness, which is important, but the generous it's incredibly important. People won't receive you if you're not generous. And I think if you're righteous, often just righteous, people are scared. So it's kind of it's a tightrope that we walk in some ways, but I think it's being generous and righteous, and I think it's very easy to see what that is, but I think emphasizing that generosity is important. A man that by his moral strength of holy character puts all other men to shame, especially the religious frauds of today who preach in his holy name. Yes, so-called men of God who eat animal flesh, hunt, fish, trap animals, indulge in hard drink, lead sordid sex lives. So here, indulge in hard drink at all. It's a little bit different than drunkenness. It's kind of the same thing, but I think indulging at all in hard drink. So just no, I mean, you could say no heavy alcohol, no anything beyond like 10% um, alcohol by volume percentage. It's just clear, in my opinion. Sordid sex lives, yeah, polyamory. You can't, like, I just has always made sense to me, like how you can't live that life. You can't have all these different types of partners and feel good. Like your spirit's gonna be all spread out and confused. And so often what I see with these people, these characters, like with these sordid sex lives that are propped up for us, is they it's like they use this kind of like this behavior, this, oh whatever, everything's fine, I'm the coolest person around behavior, to make up for their misgivings as a genuine human being, because they're not present when they're lusting around like this. And that's the essence of the wrong of this world, where like that is not cool. Like this is so propped up as being cool, or the way to be is this kind of like lackadaisical, I just am always running with whoever's in the room, and yeah, I play the characters that are around me instead of I play to the characters that are around me instead of just being yourself and being one and having a good strong relationship, a good strong bond that people can lean on instead of just, whoa, like look at how this person basically molds themselves to whatever's in a negative way, in a way that is copying and searching instead of um, genuine and felt and grounded. Um, so participate in politics. That's huge. I wish I had known about the Essene gospel when I was young, and I could have just been like, "Yep, here's my religious exemption from this bullshit." Because it's again and again and again. You're not supposed to follow men. So what? Politics is a sham. It's clear, and this is not written about. And this is a big difference between this and the KJV. It just tells you plainly to not participate in politics. I don't think it's not in the KJV. It's somewhere, maybe it's somewhere in there. Maybe I didn't read closely enough, but I don't think so. Um, and then everything really goes hand in hand. Support warfare and weapons, and have an absolute lack of interest in human affairs of their fellow men. So isn't that ironic? Where I mean, I see them every day, especially driving around. You see these big pickup trucks, usually with the bumper stickers that are like, you don't stand with this country and support our warfare, then you can stand in front of our guns or something." Like it's all about this appeal to warfare and how it's completely necessary, and in turn, these people that are about like this become very pompous and self-centered, like the people that worship war and just quote unquote nationalist, patriotic. It's ironic because they're completely wrong. They're telling you to participate in politics and to support warfare because we have to be the best or whatever, or we have to preserve our safety when it's all sham. Um, they're lying. They're trying to get you to lust after, I suppose, harming other people, or yeah, um, getting into this idea of countries fighting against countries. We're not vying for each other against each other in that way. And I think really, if you're a person of Christ, then you're not vying against anybody at all, and it really becomes quite simple. Um, so yeah, just don't pay attention to those bumper stickers because they are everywhere, and don't pay attention to that any war related bullshit. Anytime I see an American flag, really, I just pretty much ignore it. Really, any of these flags are, it's just nonsense. Like I don't the idea of nations nowadays is so strange. Because tribes make sense, but what we have set up today is just, I don't consider, I'm born in America. I've lived in America most of my life, but I don't consider myself patriotic or remotely American in the sense that they have crafted, I suppose. And then interest in the human affairs of their fellow man. I think this leads into the works thing. So like people talk all the time about good works and what that means, and I think that's it. I've been meditating a lot on that, and it's like, isn't a good work like, okay, sure, you put the food on the table for your family, you go out and do, I don't know, something that usually isn't, it's kind of like a general human like good thing. Maybe you make food for people, maybe you garden for people, maybe you, I don't know, you work in healthcare for some people, or you do something like that. Sure, fine. um that's good, but I think what a really good work is listening to somebody thoroughly, hearing them out, and using everything in your power to help them. So whether, maybe it's herbs to give to them that will help, or it's the right kind of spirit and the right kind of conversation where you're, pushing your own agenda aside and digging into theirs and their world and their, because it's more helpful, and they're gonna learn from it instead of you having to deviate and make examples from your own life instead. You can completely be present for somebody, and I think that's a good work. That's the best kind of work you can do to heal somebody. Really, that's what we're doing here, and there are opportunities for ourselves again and again and again of this, but it's about being present in them and not, you know, leaning into the next moment, trying to stay, being present is really important, I think, and that's where we find these good works, or we realize these good works. Not to mention, going forward, not to mention the innocent creatures of God. So, yes, you're supposed to care about your animals and care about their affairs. It's important. It's really important. And I chuckled a little bit, but I'm genuine there. You have to care about your fellow animals and what they're doing. And that reminds me about a funny thing that happened out when I was living out in Boulder, and the front page of the news was moving the prairie dogs to a different part of town. And I was like, this is right. Like, this makes sense. This should be at the front of the news. This shouldn't be, I don't know, some nonsense politic thing. And it was good to see that all those years ago. There are very few men who can call themselves men of God, who can even come close to the standard of humaneness Christ set for his true disciples. Jesus warned of such men who would mislead the sheep of his fold for dishonest gain and riches, men interested in fame only and not in the truth of the Godhead. Yeah, and I've been around people like this my whole life. I mean, one of the guys I worked with, I constantly think about him. Last year and a half ago now, talked about him as a plant in the video. It was the biggest plant I can think of. Just kept bragging about himself all the time and just his business. And it's like, we both were, I mean, supposedly didn't have tons of money working at this job, and, we're balancing things, having to find other work. But it was the way we each talked about what we were doing. I barely had a window to talk about what I was doing. He didn't allow it. He didn't go forward on it. Whereas when he was talking about his business, I would go ahead with it. I would talk to him about it, and just try to figure out what he was doing with it. Whereas mine wasn't so much a business, so much as, like, I guess the art I'm making and the stories I'm trying to write and stuff like that. Um, I guess what I'm trying to get at, it was like he constantly had to puff himself up, where I was asking him questions about, like, where to go with it. It's like he never cared. He was just like, well, I'm gonna do really well in my endeavors, and here's why my stuff is the best. And it was like, it was this right here. He's just interested in riches, and I mean, he wouldn't do the work that we were doing most of the time. And I think people have just this is so common with upper positions where they don't do any work, and he wasn't even in an upper position, was already in this mindset of, I don't want to do work. I'm trying to avoid work at all costs. And there is something to be said about working smarter and not harder, you know, using the tools that are at your disposal to be efficient and not waste time, and being calm and not feeling rushed. That's fine. And some days, maybe he did express that well, but I felt like most of the time he just didn't do work. And I think it led to it's this idea of dishonest gain and riches. And um, he's a worker of lawlessness. I mean, at least at present, he's got a lot of work to do, in my opinion. And I think there's plenty of people that we can point to in our lives that are like this, and they just look for material gain or look for their own status instead of what's right. And I think it's complicated to them. It's not as complicated to people that live it every day best they can. And you're going to make mistakes, so sure, but it becomes easier and easier to discern what they are and how to heal from them. So we looked at all these different terms. I think that we made a clear delineation here. I think there's clear difference between the drunkenness aspect here, whether we eat animals or not. Obviously, eating flesh is wrong. I believe, I feel confidently now, and I just think it's stark, the difference between the Essene Gospel and the KJV. So moving forward, here's my KJV Bible. I ordered it online. It wasn't like ridiculously expensive. I think it was like $25 or something, which is pretty decent. Or maybe $30 for this big book. But for as nice as it looks, it's got a lot of problems with it. So I just want to point out, this is St. John at Patmos in Revelation Revelation 1, Revelation 2, and this is a picture of him. And on the you just have the Mason M right there, like that's their like main hand sign, and it's so clearly shown. So if you want to look at this version, the Holy Bible KJV, it's a Barnes and Noble published version, but I think many of them will have this. Any of them with pictures are going to have these Mason M's throughout. Just how can you? And again, like something I noted here was this is a 1322, so this is a skulls and bones page. So maybe this page is specific as to why they chose to do the M so clearly, but it's not the only incidence. Here we have Daniel. Yeah, that's a Mason M to me. Look at the way that the hands being held. And I will say, like the middle finger and the semi pinky, they are kind of like attached at the same um, ligament. They seem to go up and down together. So I will like my buddy Snow Global and I have talked about how if you put your hand down, you kind of hold your hip, you put and you get a little bit tired or whatever. It is very common to fall into that Mason M. I I'll be there with you, but to draw it is so clear and indicative of tampering, or the correctors, or the Nicolaitans, however you want to refer to them, synagogue of Satan, coming in and changing the words of the Bible to mess with people. And I think these Mason M's are just indicative that the KJV is, while it may be a good version in many ways, it's clearly tainted. Here we have Christ in the synagogues, right? And what's the synagogue member doing? I mean, you can't see. The pinky is kind of hidden above, but this is a shitty picture I took. But yeah, it's the same Mason M hand sign, and of course it's a synagogue member doing that. I mean, it's what they do. It's just... and then here we have Lazarus, and he's begging, and this lady here is telling him to, like, head off or whatever, and she's saying it with what? The Mason M. I mean, they just do it constantly. And I'm just showing you here. I'm sure plenty of you have Bibles, and there's plenty of Bibles out there without any pictures, but I wanted one with pictures in it because I think it helps cement some of the ideas home. I mean, obviously, I think we should all be good enough at reading comprehension to draw these images from our minds and not need the aid of these images. But I think, I don't know, for a younger person going through it or understanding this stuff for the first time, it's helpful to have images that go along with the story. Just like when you were a child. And when so many of them have these Mason M's in it, you can't ignore it. And I'm much more aligned with this Essene gospel. It makes more sense to me. And I think that we've got to continue to figure out what this exactly means. Now, does this M mean, like I said before, the significance of these certain passages being associated with the M's? Because yes, it's not every single picture that has a big Mason M in it. So is that it? Or is it just the reality that, hey, it's tampered, we're acknowledging that it's tampered, you're being let in now that you can see that it's been tampered, so you have to use just greater discernment. And I think simple discernment that I've made here, and I think anybody can make, is that the Essene gospel and the KJV are not one-to-one, and the Essene it requires more chastening, and I think the chastening it requires isn't that crazy, and it does make you feel healthier if you're not drinking alcohol, or even any alcohol, and then furthermore not living in the flesh in a truer sense. So I hope that this video reaches you guys at a good time, and you're doing this chastening too, and then we'll continue to see more clearly, and maybe dig into the Bible more and figure out beyond the Paul stuff and some of the more overt nonsense of sacrificing animals and such. Beyond that, what in the Bible is needing a closer look, and it just clearly seems like it was edited or or changed purposefully to warp our paths, to confuse us. So here we are on a path of clarity, truth. We came to this life searching for a world that is just and where people feel the confidence in each other. And I think if we're living in in this Essene gospel way, it's gonna be realized. It's inevitable. But to see it happen in physical, to do the actions that align with the words is complicated. And I know where I'm at right now. I'll go forward with that. Yes, I don't hunt animals. I don't eat any animals. I'm only 8 years removed from doing that, and only even less so from the animal products. Um, Never supported weapons in warfare. Never was big into politics and so forth. But where I find myself thinking about is the thoughts. The dark thoughts do come up, and I think it's okay to acknowledge. It's good to acknowledge them, and then maybe keep a journal on, say, like, oh, did any dark thoughts come up today? Or, just trying to live innocently in every day, and not thinking on the morrow, and reflecting on how that works, and what comes up for you and why, and how you can continue to chasten, and maybe there's something that you're missing that will help you to not have these dark thoughts, and to feel more pure, and to not get in your own way, and do what you're here to do, which is do good in myriad ways that you can, uh, making song, making food, drawing, being helpful to people, living for people and for God, and helping people to see these truths, even if they may be hard to convey, or maybe people may not want to hear them, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to do the hard stuff, and I think it makes life a lot easier in the long run. So let's live long lives. Let's chasten ourselves to these things that really aren't that difficult, um, and not live at variance with each other, um, and keep digging into this book, and see see what kernels of truth are there, and then, um, please dig into the deeper teachings of Jesus, and search into this Essene gospel, and see the more humane side of Christ that is not neglected per se, but isn't elaborated, where I think it would be helpful to many people. So God bless you all, and I hope you're continuing to search all the time, and keeping your head up. All right. Have a good day, y'all.